Welcome to the inUpowers podcast, where we give a name and a face to emotion. We discuss the real and raw when it comes to mental and emotional health. We are here to teach you that emotions are information and behavior is a choice. We want to help you make safer connections through healthy communication by empowering you to understand what your emotions are telling you. I'm your host, Tami. Let's get started. Welcome to the inUpowers podcast. I'm Tami, your host and the creator of the inUpowers. And today we are going to talk about RAE, Rage Anxiety Explosion, and PEG, Protective Encouraging Guidance. And these two characters, how they came to be, some theories about them. But before that, I want us to do our Moments Minute. And I want you to think about a time when you have spent a lot of energy worrying. Think about it. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. What are you doing when you're actually worrying? Are you putting energy over something you can control in this very minute? Or are you putting energy to something that might happen or something somebody else has control over? When you worry, you are wasting energy on something you have no control over. That's why you're worrying. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it belongs to someone else. Sometimes coming up with a plan in your head gives you peace about not being able to do anything or losing control of what the situation is. That worry work, and it's work to worry. And it can spin and spin and spin and spin and spin in your brain. But it comes out. And that's how we created RAE. Rage, Anxiety, Explosion. He is a storm cloud of worry work. And he has worked himself into such a frenzy that nobody understands him. Nobody understands the world. And if he could control this or he could control that, if everybody would just do it the way he's already pre-planned it in his head, then he wouldn't get frustrated. And then he wouldn't cry, rain. And then he wouldn't yell, thunder. And then he wouldn't hit something or someone, lightning. RAE, this character, is also very overstimulated. He has electrical currents going all over him, and right before he cries, you'll see the electricity around his eyes and before it rains. And right before the thunder, you'll see a brown cloud and electrical around his voice. And people that have rage or have a lot of anxiety spend a lot of time and energy worrying. I'm not talking about anxiety disorders or anything like that. I'm just talking about a regular day when you are worrying about something you have no control over. If you're worrying about your grade, study for the class, get the assignments in, and turn them in. If you've done the very best you can, worrying about it's not going to change your grade. You can go and ask if you can do something more, but you have to put the energy in beforehand instead of being frustrated at the end or exploding because it didn't follow suit or it didn't fit into your life. If you're worrying about somebody else and their behaviors and their choices, you can't do that either. You cannot control anyone, and you're not meant to. And sometimes our anxiety and our rage makes it so like, you know what, if I'm louder, you're going to follow me. Or if I stomp around and hit things, then everybody's going to behave. For a minute, until they're tired, or until your verbal abuse or physical abuse has gone on so long that they just disappear. Rage, anxiety, explosion, that worry work, when it comes out as an explosion, it can really hurt people. And overthinking and over-worrying about stuff doesn't do you any good. It keeps you stuck in a storm. And it just takes one wrong thing, somebody to cut you off on the road, or somebody slamming a door, or your clothing ripping, or your makeup not turning out, or your haircut going bad, or your shoelaces breaking, whatever it is, to just blow up. Then what? Then you've made a big mess, but not just for yourself, for someone else. Rage, anxiety, explosion. He is a storm cloud full of worry and stress and anxiety, and the explosions come out as tears, verbal abuse, or physical abuse. Or he'll just stonewall you. He'll just shut down completely. That's not okay. The next character I created was Peg, protective, encouraging guidance. She's your gut intuition. She also is pretty cool with Ray too, but let's talk about her. First of all, her name was Gap. With these characters, at the time I was doing hair, and so I had this amazing chair of just the most phenomenal clients whom I love, and chose to give up so that we could create the inUpowers. And I was telling my clients about certain characters, and some of them helped me with the names. Well, Gayleen, who you'll meet in one of these episodes, actually helped me with Gap. Gap. I'm like, she's your gut intuition, you have butterflies flapping, and she processes things. And I'm like, what is your gut intuition? She's like, it's guidance. I'm like, it is. And we're like, and what else is it? And we're like, it's encouraging. And then we're like, oh yeah, and it protects us. Like sometimes your gut's like, don't go down that alley, right? Like your gut just tells you don't do it. And so I'm like, oh, we know our gut intuition's name. It's Gap, it's Gap, it's Gap. It was so funny. I ran upstairs to tell Christina, and she was like, Gap? And I'm like, yeah, Gap, what do you think? It's so great. And she was like, you said she's a she? I'm like, yeah, what do you think? And she'll process everything, and she'll butterflies, and I was just super excited. And she was like, is it okay if we call her Peg? I'm like, yes, that's so much better. I have epilepsy and I have dyslexia. And so I was like, oh yeah, I just flipped her name around. I was super happy with Gap. I'm extra happy with Peg. But Peg is your gut intuition. And she is encouraging and protective and guiding. And your gut intuition knows, our soul knows when things are good and when things are bad. Like we can spend a lot of time worrying and we can create a lot of butterflies in our belly. And it doesn't mean they're right or wrong. It just means we can create them. But when things are intuitively wrong, sometimes the soul just knows. And so Peg, she will dig in her heel for you and stop you in your tracks. And on her boot, she has butterflies. She has some in the front and in the back. Sometimes your gut intuition is like, I'm too scared to go on stage. I don't want to go on stage. I have butterflies in my stomach. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. But you need to go on stage, or you need to do your presentation, or you need to get in front of the crowd, because that is the next right step for you. And so the butterflies on the back will propel you forward. But there's other times when you want to go and rescue someone, or you want to do something that inhibits somebody else from learning their lesson or trying to be better, that you are over helping or overstepping your bounds. And the butterflies on the front of her boots will hold you back. Sometimes it's scary to let others that we love fall. And sometimes it's scary to let tantrums from our children happen. And that can actually help. Their Ray can turn into our Ray moment too, because now their tantrums are triggering anxiety and stress and worry in us, like, oh no, are they going to be okay? And we need to make sure that we listen to our gut intuition. Our soul knows. Our soul knows what's good and what's bad. And in life, there are things that we have to do that are just stinky and that are just absolutely hard, and nobody wants to do it. And it's a lot easier to worry about it than to just dig in and do the work. In fact, that's what Peg does. She's a gardener, and she digs in and does the work, and she's in stomach and intestines. And here's a funny little note. Her colon goes into her boot, so her anus is in her boot, so she gets rid of all her crap in her boot. She doesn't throw it on you, she doesn't fling it on you, it's in her boot. And then because she's a gardener, what do gardeners do with manure? They grow new things. So no matter how stinky or how hard or whatever the lesson is in your life, there is a piece to nourish you with it, and there is a piece in that lesson to help you learn the lesson and grow new things. The rage, anxiety, explosion, that worry work of the hard, and I'm not capable of doing this, and I'm not capable of doing that, and I'm just going to spend a lot of energy worrying about it but never have any action, doesn't do you any good. Peg's the action piece. Peg is going to dig in and do the dirty work. She's going to plant that garden. She's going to do the homework assignment ahead of time. She's going to practice the speech before she gets on stage. She's going to do what it takes so that when you have to do the hard thing, you have the muscles to do it and the strength, and you've nourished yourself, and you've created a healthy way of doing it. Not everything in life that you're going to get to do is going to be easy, especially the first time. And that's okay. In fact, the first time could be mostly crap. That's also okay, because when you get to the other side, you have lessons and muscles to try again. But being paralyzed by the worry or sabotaging others because of your worry. I've heard that a lot from moms and dads and family members and loved ones in my chair, that their worry is so extensive that their children and their loved ones and their friends and their family are scared to try, because they let their fears and their worry and their tears and the yelling and the frustration stop the other person from having the courage to try. It's natural to worry, and it's natural to cry. And sometimes we just get so mad we're yelling and stomping around. And if you're hitting someone or something, that's not okay. No one deserves any of that. Ray is our one character that can turn into our other character, Sue, which is severe unraveling event or trauma. And because, in fact, he kills more people in the world, Ray, the rain, from flash floods than actually tsunamis do. And of all the characters, he's been one of my hardest to get to know and to have empathy for and to be able to understand, because those explosions, you feel better. But in your frustration and anger, you could have said words like hate and I'm never, and you'll never, and you're the worst. And you say all these very hurtful, demeaning, derogatory things, which feel great to get out of you, but just hurt and destroy and can traumatize others. Check your worry. Check yourself. Check your gut. Is this really a problem, or am I just scared? Is this something I actually need to be putting effort into? And, if I put a bunch of seeds in and I pull all the weeds and I water and I take care of the ground, when it's a few months later, I have something to harvest. That's actually production, right? So if I have to get something done and I'm worrying about it, but I'm not putting any action for it, when it's time to do it, I'm going to explode because I'm not going to be prepared. I spent a lot of time worrying, but I didn't do anything about it. But if I'm more like Peg and I plant the seed and I take care of it and I'm practicing and I'm doing what it takes so that when the seed grows, I have something to harvest, then you don't have to worry as much, because you're actually doing something about what you're worrying about, not just thinking about it. I invite you this week to check your worry, to think about your brain and what you truly have control over and what you can take action over. You might surprise yourself to realize that if you actually do the work, that it's not as hard as you thought it was. And you might have made it a bigger deal in that storm cloud of yours, or in your head, than it actually was. Ray, rage, anxiety, explosion, and Peg, protective, encouraging guidance. Your soul knows, and you're capable of doing the work. And worrying is a waste of energy. And I invite you to check your worry this week. And I want to remind you that emotions are information and behavior is a choice. And you're brilliantly made to be great. And until next time, see ya! Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the inUpowers podcast. We are grateful you are here. Please share this podcast with those you know who might need it, and follow and rate us so we can continue providing this podcast to you. Follow us on social media to see more visuals about the inUpowers, and join us next week for another episode. Until then, remember, the power to choose is in you.